Rogers Restaurant here in Burtonsville, Maryland. My name is Jim Clemondon. My brother Pete and I own this restaurant, and we're excited to have you here. Thank you for all coming out and seeing Cal Ripken Jr. Cal is a man that needs no introduction, but I'll try to give him one anyway. Some of his
what are you going to say?
Well, I was going to talk about
Mr. 2131.
Yeah. Well, let me say, I started when I was about 8, and then I made the All-Star team. Oh, no, never mind.
I will be brief. First of all, Cal is here representing Roy Rogers Restaurants because we are celebrating our 50th anniversary as a brand. So it all began in 1968 with one restaurant in Virginia, and here we are with 53 restaurants. We're in 6 states serving our great food to thousands and thousands of people. So thanks for being here. I hope you all got a chance to get something to eat. We've got Cal Ripken, who has agreed to be our spokesperson for the year, and Cal aligned with our company and our mission and our values, and we thought he'd be a great spokesperson for us. 19-time All-Star, you all know, World Series champion, Rookie of the Year, 2-time Gold Glove winner, and he played in a number of games back-to-back. I can't remember how many that was. Does anyone know what that number is? 2,632 games, consecutive game streak. So Cal owns that record, a record that shall not be beaten. So without further ado, Cal Ripken Jr. Thank you, Cal, for being here.
Thank you. It was just funny. I always sit here and listen to some of the things that people say. 2-time MVP and Gold Glove, et cetera, et cetera. I always remember when I left the game, I had a Major League Baseball record that I wasn't so proud of. It was the most ground into double plays in the history of baseball. And what made me feel really good about that was the record that I broke was Hank Aaron's. So many times you got to play a long time to ground into that many double plays. But I will tell you that since I've left, Albert Pujols now has passed me, and I think 2 or 3 other players have passed me as well. So I'm no longer the Major League leader in ground into double plays.
Cal, that streak of yours takes a lot of perseverance, determination. Those are qualities that certainly we can all relate to. I know your dad and your brother probably had a lot to do with being role models and helping you through. What other folks helped you through that streak of 2,632 games?
Well, I mean, once you're finished playing, you look back and you try to remember all the people that were instrumental in your success. And I think you mostly think of your parents. You mostly think of that special coach. You mostly think of that teacher. And I think you really think about the people that are close to you, which is your family. And I know that you work with your family. And I was lucky enough to have my dad in professional baseball. My brother Billy played 12 years of professional baseball. We were teammates for about 7 years. Dad was the manager at one point. Brother Billy was the starting second baseman, and I was the starting shortstop. So it was a lot of fun to be out there. And sometimes when you do work with family, sometimes you take them for granted. And you don't realize how special that is until it's taken away. My dad was fired as a manager, and he ended up retiring. My brother Billy went on to play for the Texas Rangers and a couple other teams. So I guess I would offer some bit of advice. If you guys have a chance to be lucky enough to work with family, take a moment and realize how special that is, because that's your support network. That's who you need to be successful.
Our family business was started, my brother and I, my brother Pete is back there taking photos. Our dad started our business and was there in 1968 when the Roy Rogers chain began. So we're celebrating our 50th year. We think that's a pretty cool streak. Tell the crowd why you thought it would be good to partner up with Roy Rogers this year to celebrate our 50th.
Well, I wish I could have played baseball for 50 years. That would have been a nice round number in the end. To me, when we start talking about possibly working together, I know that I remembered Roy Rogers, and it was a very special brand to me. We were a team that traveled around, my family was with my dad, who was in the minor leagues for the first 14 years, and we traveled around quite a bit. And many times when we were looking for a place to eat, the special treat for us was to stop at Roy Rogers. So when we started talking about it, it immediately made that warm feeling come back. And I started to think about times, and I knew once we started talking about their desire to help the foundation to help kids, I knew that we were cut from the same cloth. So we really enjoyed the relationship. We enjoyed being able to help kids, but mostly I enjoyed tapping into that good feeling, that comfort feeling that we all have, we all need as we get older.
Throughout the year, Cal, we have been supporting the Cal Ripken Sr. Foundation through various programs at our Roy Rogers restaurants. Tell the group here a little bit more about the foundation and what led you to start it many years ago, and what you're doing now to help kids around the country.
Yeah, just to give you a little context, we lost my dad way too young in life. He was only 63 years old. About 20 years ago we lost him. We lost him to lung cancer. And we started to try to remember and carve out what we thought Dad's legacy was in life. And it really was about developing kids. He did it professionally in the minor leagues to try to help young ball players get to the big leagues, but he also used baseball to get out in the community and almost as an icebreaker to introduce baseball and sport to kids that didn't have all the same advantages. And all of a sudden, by creating an interest in what he was talking about, he made a relationship. He created mentorships with other kids, and you start to push them in the direction that some of the values that sport in general can give you. And so we started the foundation in Dad's name, and our goal is to use baseball the way that Dad did, to go in there and expose kids to baseball, expose law enforcement to baseball, and have law enforcement end up teaching baseball in some of the tougher areas. Where we then create good solid mentorship programs, and we've had a lot of success. We're a national foundation now. We're virtually in all states. We've built, I think, about 75 fields now. I keep losing track because the fields keep adding up on the list. But we've built these fields that cost about $1 million, $1.5 million per place. And we call them outdoor classrooms. That's where we can administer our programs, and it's where kids can be kids and start to focus positively on sports and the values and the lessons that come from sport.
You spoke earlier a little bit about your going to Roy Rogers restaurants when you were a young guy. What's your favorite food at Roy Rogers, Cal?
The roast beef is mine, although I'm moving towards chicken a lot faster, but there was something special about the roast beef sandwich for me. It's something that I guess you don't have all the time in your daily lives, and to me it was that special meal that I always look forward to. I do like the chicken though a lot too.
My recollection when we first had lunch with you and met you for the first time, I think you had the roast beef, the chicken, and the burger.
Well, sure. Well, now I don't exercise. I just eat everything.
So we've got a couple of minutes for some questions from the audience. Does anybody have a question they'd like to pose to Cal? Yeah. There's one right over here. Let me hold the microphone for you.
Could you say hi to Spencerville Baseball?
Spencerville Baseball? Yeah, hi Spencerville Baseball.
That's not a question.
Good luck.
That's a statement. We've got a question, a young lady over here. Yes, I see her hand up.
Who wants the mic?
How many miles do they run?
How many miles do I run? Nothing. 0 miles.
Okay, another question.
It's how far is it around the bases? That's a really good question. Because a lot of times baseball is looked at as not a endurance sport per se. Because when you have a play, it lasts roughly 4 or 5 seconds, and it's over, and then you rest and you get to play again. So we always made fun of some of the training programs in spring training, that we're training to run around the bases, which is 90 feet in between each base. So you have 4 paths in between. So 4 times 90 is 360 feet. So we used to always train that all we have to do is train for 360 feet. That's the most you can actually you run in one particular time. I never got a chance to run 360 feet all the way out, which would be an inside the park home run. I thought I had one in Kansas City. I blew the ball down the right field line, and the right fielder tried to make a catch on it, and he was a little bit short.
Rachel.
Lost our mic altogether. That was right in the most interesting part of the story. So the ball landed just short of the guy's glove, and it went all the way to the fence and rolled all the way to right center field. And I circled the bases thinking I had an inside the park home run. The official scorer did not agree with me. He ruled it a single and a 3-base error. So my only chance for an inside the park home run was spoiled.
All right.
Yes, we're
I
back.
think we're back on. All right, we got another question right here.
Hey, so great to meet you. Grew up watching you at Memorial Stadium and then at Camden. Obviously, you had a lot of great moments in your career, but if you had to choose the greatest, what would it be?
That's a pretty easy question because I've had a lot of good feelings in the game. I mean, hitting a walk-off homer is really a great feeling. Getting a big hit in a big situation, winning a big series in New York. I often thought when I first came up, the Yankees were not good and we were pretty good, and then we were not so good and they were really good, and then we came back together to be good at the same time. So I would say that when you're playing for the pennant in American League East and you're playing in a series in New York in September, and you got a 4-game series. So if you split it, then you stay the same. But if either team wins 3 out of 4, it kind of determines who wins the pennant. And a couple times we were in those series, and we ended up winning 3 out of 4 in New York. And I think one of the greatest feelings that I've ever had was you go out in the after the game's over, you finish 4, you beat them in their place, and you get on the bus, and then everybody crowds around the bus, and they're all yelling at you, and they're telling you you're number 1, and they're using a different finger than normal. But leaving the parking lot and looking back, there's a sense of accomplishment that comes over you. That's probably one of the better feelings. But the best feeling overall is winning the World Series. I got a chance to catch the last out of the World Series, a small little line drive right at me. I caught it. And the feeling you get, the fulfillment, satisfaction, joy of holding that baseball and knowing that it's all over and you won the World Series, there is nothing that comes close to that.
I was there.
You were there. All right. You don't look old enough to be there.
Grand Slam in the Bronx, right? Around 4th of July?
Grand Slam in the Bronx around 4th of July. I don't remember that.
Pretty sure I saw you.
Grand Slam in the Bronx. I remember hitting a home run off of Dave Brigetti that got out in about half a second.
Got a question, Jeff?
That might have been a Grand Slam. How did I feel in my first game? I was excited, nervous, and scared because I wanted to be a big leaguer, but I wasn't sure that I could be. So you don't know until you actually get out there and start playing. So I was very nervous, didn't want to make a mistake. I wanted to do well, but once you start playing a little bit, once you gain your confidence, then everything starts to turn out. So I was a little scared.
All right, we got a question back here. A gentleman with a Expos hat.
Hi, Cal, Yankee fan, but nice Expos hat. What was it like playing the Yankees?
I always enjoyed playing the Yankees. When you went into Old Yankee Stadium, and I preface this by saying when you're good and they're good at the same time, there's an excitement that's created in that stadium that's unlike pretty much any other stadium. It's loud. They know instinctively when there's a big moment in the game. And I remember a couple of times when we were winning and the Yankees started to come back, say it was the 7th inning and the first guy gets on and the second guy walks, and then all of a sudden the pitching coach comes out and starts talking to the guy on the mound. I would go in sometimes just to listen to what they were going to say, and there were times in Yankee Stadium that you could not hear that conversation even standing on there. It was so loud and it felt like the stadium was shaking a little bit. And there were times when you could come out of your moment, kind of look up and go, man, this is the coolest thing ever. And then you had to go back into your concentration mode and kind of force them out of your mind so you could play. But that's when you're playing playoff baseball and when you're playing really big series, that's a really good environment to play in. Now, years later when they built a new one, I didn't get a chance to play in the new one, but when they built a new one, I went back on behalf of TBS, and we were covering the game, and it didn't feel like it was nearly as loud. Somehow they lost some of the excitement that was created in that ballpark. Some people say that, all the front row seats were given to corporate people, and it changed the whole mindset there in the ballpark. But it was one of the most exciting places to play, for sure.
Cal, I'm going to jump in with a question. Tell us a little bit about winning the Roberto Clemente Award and what that meant to you.
Well, the Roberto Clemente Award was really for community service. Roberto Clemente was a great humanitarian that we lost way too early in a humanitarian mission. He was helping other people. So when you get to the big leagues as a baseball player, your goal obviously is to play baseball. But then you realize that you can be in a position, you have a platform where you can help people. And I think a lot of people wanted to be like Roberto Clemente. I wanted to do the things that he did. We all couldn't, but we had a platform in which we could do the best we can. So when I was selected as the Roberto Clemente Award winner, it was a different sort of satisfaction, a different sort of feeling that you were able to accomplish something not by performing on the field, but by performing off the field. And it was about helping the community and helping people. And again, once my dad died, we started to laser focus our commitment to kids. Instead of just trying to look for all good causes and try to help people that were in need, we really wanted to help kids, and we wanted to give them the best chance we could. But it makes me feel really good when you get nominated and ultimately win that award.
We've got a couple more questions out here. I'm not going to get the mic, or can you yell out the question?
Yeah. Just, the focus on the launch angle for home runs, do you think that's hurting the game and making these guys more specialists instead of well-rounded baseball players?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Did you guys hear all that? He had a really good voice to be able to put it out there. My brother Billy, I don't know if you've tuned into Billy on MLB Network. I think he's the best one up there. He has the gift of gab, and he also has the smarts inside his head to really explain everything. We talk about that every once in a while. Billy's really good about explaining that. The launch angle is a measurement, okay? So it's a measurement of the angle of the ball coming off the bat. And so when you start to overvalue that, because some hitters are fly ball hitters, some are line drive hitters, some are ground ball hitters. When you start to overvalue the fly ball, because that ultimately leads to home runs, and you start to think about launch angle, kids then think, how do I produce a launch angle? And they start uppercutting, okay? But it's not the uppercut swing that produces, it's how the ball comes off your bat. Now maybe there is some, so it's starting to affect how people teach. And when you teach long, an uppercut swing, Ted Williams had a system on how he taught, and it was a slight uppercut. But you're starting to get some extreme uppercuts that are coming as a result of this launch angle. And the bat, in my opinion, and I'll preface it by saying that, when you're swinging, you want the bat head to be able to stay in the strike zone the longest time. And if you go up too much, you're coming in the strike zone and out of the strike zone, and you've got to be darn near perfect in your contact points. The whole idea of hitting is to keep a level swing to meet the ball squarely and then drive the ball. I was a line drive home run guy. I produced backspin. Dave Winfield produced backspin off his ball. We didn't have great launch angles, but Winfield had near 500 home runs. I had 430 home runs. And if you just think, if you hit a fly ball to the shortstop 10 times in a row, you're 0 for 10, okay? But you got a really great launch angle, but that doesn't mean anything. So I think what's happening now is they're starting to look at certain hitters, or Stanton, Giancarlo Stanton for the Yankees, does not produce a lot. He hits balls that get out of the ballpark like that, line drives that just carry out of the ballpark. So it's unfair to say, okay, because launch angle has produced home runs in other people, we're going to try to teach that way. So I think from where I sit in the youth field, I think it's a little dangerous to start to teach to a measurement. There might be some other value that you see in the developmental side of your pro side, but I think it's when you're talking about launch angle, the interpretation of launch angle for the kids is to produce an uppercut swing, and I just think that's the wrong way to learn how to hit.
We got a question back here. Yes, sir. Speak up, please.
So, I'm Steve. This is my friend Megan. We're both teachers, so we wanted to thank you for saying that you love teachers. So we figured it was worth a shot to ask as teachers if we could bring our kids up and take a picture with you. So we have our 5-year-old and our 3-year-old. So, or her 3-year-old, not mine.
That's a question.
That's a question. I think I have the authority to do this once.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. You can come up here and stand up here on the stage. Take a picture.
Thanks, guys.
And I can give you the mic and then I can leave.
I teach phys ed, what I do all day.
Come on up.
Talk to a bunch of people. Hi, Cal. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Josh, say hi to Cal Ripken.
Come on up here.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
Hi.
Josh, tell me what grade you're going into this year. Tell us.
Kindergarten.
Yeah.
Is that grade after second grade or after third or is that before second grade?
Yes.
That was a trick question.
Welcome to teaching in my class. Josh, look at the camera right here in front of us.
Well done.
Okay.
Be careful setting down.
We're going to have one more question and then a real question. Not that was a real question. Well, I'm going to go, where am I going to go with this? Here, this young lady here in the polka dots. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that it is interesting. You get trained as a baseball player. That you play with a team each and every summer, and the team doesn't always stay the same. There's a lot of change out. Even a team that's really good sometimes changes out at the 8 out of 25-man roster. Yes, you still keep in touch with. I just talked to Brady Anderson a couple days ago. BJ Surhoff, I think, is who you're talking about. BJ lives out in the valley, and he's done really great work in the community with autism. Al Bumbry still lives in the area. Ken Singleton, Eddie Murray. Now, I was glad to see that the Orioles brought Eddie Murray back in a capacity to be there to take advantage of his knowledge and also his popularity. So Brooks Robinson is there. Although I didn't play with Brooksy, he's a little older than I am. He was my hero growing up. So. Yeah, it is a little bit funny because I will tell you a story about Brady Anderson because he spent all that time. He was a really good friend of mine, and then when you go off to doing something else, all of a sudden you're not put together there anymore. And Brady said, he goes, I just realized that after you retire, we used to always look at the off season as just being the off season. I said, but the off season now is all the time. We used to go home for 3 months and then come back together at spring training, and everybody would be all goofy. They haven't seen each other for a while, and you get all goofy at spring training, and then you get back in your routine. But what Brady said is, he says, once you retire, all the time is like the off season, and so you really have to work hard to catch up. Brady is with the Orioles in a nice capacity in their front office and has a lot of responsibilities. So he's still doing the grind of baseball every day. When you get away from the grind of baseball, you realize that the whole world doesn't revolve around baseball, which you thought it did, and now you have other things to do. So if I'm going to get a hold of Brady Anderson, I got to call him at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm usually asleep by 9 o'clock at night, so that's kind of hard.
Well, Cal, we want to thank you so much for being here and meeting with the community here in Burtonsville, Maryland at the Roy Rogers Restaurant, helping us celebrate our 50th year in business. And this month, the crowd should know Cal Ripken just celebrated a birthday a couple of days ago.
Yeah, so
how about a happy birthday for Cal Ripken?
Yes, my birthday was August 24th, and I turned 30 or something. Actually, it's easy to look up. I was 58 on Friday. So I stopped counting birthdays, but I'm still all right.
Well, happy birthday. Thank you again, Cal. Thanks for being with us.